Welcome to the Canon Cantina, a Star Wars show where we try to answer the question, who is Luke Skywalker, before the release of Star Wars Episode 9. How you doing, everybody? My name is Mike. I am broadcasting here from Salt Lake Base on planet Utah. It is snowing right now. I am excited to talk about Star Wars with my Star Wars best friend, Jesse, but I'm also thinking, man, you have to get up in like 6 or 7 hours to go snowboarding and take advantage of all this good stuff tomorrow. I'm just letting you behind the curtain on some of the sacrifices I make for you, the listener. I have to go have fun, but be kind of tired tomorrow. I'm such a person worthy of your pity, I guess. Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing great. That's a good description, Mike. I like that. And that's also kind of a callback, if you remember, on our last episode, Dark Apprentice, where we talked about, driving yourself mad, staying up all night, making a lightsaber, and not getting sleep, because it seems like we do this more often than we intend to.
And we talked about Han and Kip. They went like hover skiing or something.
That's
on
right.
Some weird 90s planet.
Some weird bonding.
Sure. Thank you for tying my horrible, unnecessary complaining into what we're talking about today.
I
Great
love
job.
it. I love it.
That is what you are here for.
But guys, if you notice today, we are actually putting a bow on this trilogy, the Jedi Academy trilogy, with the third and final book, Champions of the Force.
Are you sure it's not called Champions of Diminishing Returns?
Oh, no. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It does finish this up, and we're going to finish this up for you guys if you've been following along at home, especially if you haven't been reading the book or listening to it on Audible. You get to hear the conclusion from us, and we'll try to deliver it in a reasonably fun way. I see Mike's, you're not thrilled.
No, we will make it as fun as possible. There is just so much that happens in this last book. I'm worried I will not be able to do it in a way that's understandable, but we will absolutely do our best.
Yes.
Remember, we are a Luke Skywalker centered show, for better or for worse. So we're going to focus on his part in the story. And really, that's actually the easy part of what we have to talk about today.
There's a lot to talk about.
The insanity happens with everybody else in the galaxy in this third chapter of the Jedi Academy trilogy.
That's a good way to say it, Mike. And if you guys remember the last two books of this series, if you've been following along at home, and if you haven't heard those yet, definitely go back and listen to them before you get here. But the last two books, Mike, were so well-paced. We might not have loved everything that happened in them, but the pacing was so well done, and there was nothing too crazy going in every book. Every arc was pretty contained and finished, and led to the next book. And this one, it seems like Kevin J. Anderson was like, I want to do a lot of things, and maybe I should have put a few of these things in the last book, but I didn't. Let's just get all this in.
Well, and some of that may have had to do with the timeline. So we learned something new tonight. Champions of the Force was released in September of 1994. All three of these books came out in 1994. I think it was just like a 2 or 3 month gap between each one.
Right.
So that's a pretty impressive clip for these novels to come out.
Yeah. Clearly he was, I would assume, writing them much earlier before this, but I don't know. He could have turned them out fast too, Mike. But what's really interesting...
well, maybe he got to chapter 3 and was like, I need pages, fake Death Star.
Oh yeah, that's a little preview of what's to come. Also, though, Mike, you got to mention 1994. We also learned, as we mentioned in a very early previous Legends episode, the courtship of Princess Leia came out this same year. In fact, right before this series, came out in the summer in May of 94. Right?
Courtship came out in May, yes, of 1994. So
a lot of books.
Thrawn Trilogy was a huge hit in 1993. It might have started in 92.
That final Thrawn book, that final Thrawn book.
And Star Wars was riding high in 1994. Put out 4 very important, that's how I'll say it, very important novels in the old expanded universe, which we now know as Legends. So like I said earlier, we are a Luke Skywalker focused podcast. So we center each of our episodes around 3 questions about him. Jesse, what are they?
Question number 1 is, what state is Luke in as he begins his journey? How do the events and characters he encounters impact his development as a hero? And would Luke's experiences in this story make him different from the Luke that we eventually meet in The Last Jedi?
That's right. And that last one is specifically tailored to our Legends sources, like the book we're talking about today. And just one more warning. If you have not listened to the previous 2 episodes where we talk about books 1 and 2 of this trilogy, you are going to be very confused. Going forward from here.
They close off a lot of stories from those, so finish them off. So take a listen to those episodes. But if not, buckle up. We're gonna jump inside the Sun Crusher.
That's right. Take a listen, read a Wikipedia article, and here we go.
Ever since Luke disappeared, people have been looking for him.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
A lot of rumors, stories.
And I became a legend.
People that knew him best.
Luke. Young Skywalker.
Luke.
It's all true.
I am a Jedi. Like my father before me.
All of it.
So our first question, this might be the most interesting answer we've ever had to what state is Luke in at the beginning of the story. He's in a Sith coma, sort of locked inside his own body.
That's right.
Luke is technically still alive, but his new apprentice, Kip Duran, who has all sorts of force potential, has trapped him in the corner of his mind, basically.
Right.
Using Sith or dark side abilities from the influence of Exar Kun.
Exar Kun, yeah. It was kind of like Kip was possessed by Exar Kun, and him and his power and Exar Kun's power both together trapped Luke. And Luke is so trapped, Mike. Initially, we think as readers reading the last book that maybe he's asleep or in a coma in our world or something like that. But like, you're right. He's not like you said, a corner of his mind. I think that's the best way to describe it. He's not in the netherworld of the Force. He's not in any of that right now. He's literally stuck in his own brain.
He is technically alive and his brain is active. He is conscious, but it's all just like pushed into a corner. Before we go any farther, just for transparency's sake for listeners again, I did not read the novel in preparation for this show. I read it a long time ago. But for this entire trilogy, I decided to do the whole thing on Audible. So I listened to the abridged audiobook version narrated by Anthony Heald, which is something I listened to as a kid, but I also read the book a long time ago. But when I say Exar Kun, it's because he says Exar Kun's last name really weird every time he mentions him in the audiobook. Drove me a little insane in books 2 and 3. But yeah, just to give you some context, I may miss some nuance of the story because I only had the 3-ish hour abridged audiobook version, because I just frankly did not have time to read the novel in a week.
Yeah, Mike, and I've got a similar circumstance to yours. I, of course, own these books, and they're the same copies I got back then, which is very exciting, on my bookshelf. But I read half this book, and then I ended up, due to work and time as well, I had to finish the second half with the audiobook. So all that crazy stuff is happening at the end. That was the abridged audiobook for me as well. So, yeah, but both very good, enjoyable. The book is clearly better. Like we've said in the previous 2 episodes, because the abridged just moves so fast. But, if you just want to get a fun story, sometimes these abridged Star Wars books are actually pretty entertaining. The ones that are good, at least. So, I think it's fine. So,
yeah, I just wanted to remind people, or for those that didn't take our warning and are starting with part 3, if we miss details, it's because we're going off these abridged audiobooks.
Definitely. But Luke is in a coma. He's in the Sith coma. And his students don't know what to do, Mike. They're like, Cantorus died. Kip turned to the dark side. Master Skywalker is in a coma. What do we do? And I actually really like how this story starts. I like how the last one ends too, because this is the kind of stuff I really like with the Jedi Academy, where outside of Kip, no one is overly exceptional in the Force in these books at this point. And they literally don't know what to do. They're like, we've had a month or 2 of training and we've done everything Master Skywalker taught us, but like no one has a lightsaber yet. They have Gantorus's lightsaber lying around. Luke's lightsaber is clipped on his belt, and that'll become important later. But they don't even have lightsabers. They don't know what to do, and they're just kind of at a loss. And what's really interesting is at this point in the story, if you guys remember Silgal from the last story, which was the female Mon Calamari ambassador that Leia discovered on Akbar's planet, and Leia discovered she had the ability to help people heal. She was a healer of sorts, even though it was very underdeveloped for her. She got Silgal to the temple. And what's kind of cool is Luke taught Silgal how to do a couple things with healing. He taught how to find, basically to reach inside, someone's cells and find things. But he's like we've mentioned before, Luke's like, I'm not a healer. I'm teaching you kind of what I know applied to your skills in the Force. But what I like about her is she takes over.
He's like, I'm opening the anatomy textbook and I'm looking at the same pictures you are. I don't know what to do with them from here.
Yeah. He's just like, I'm more advanced than you in the Force, but that's it. So I was never
grew up
Force
on a water farm. I don't know anything about being a doctor.
But if I will mention though, Mike, if you remember in some of our things in the Thrawn trilogy and stuff, where Zahn invented the kind of Jedi nap, if you remember that, and
I do remember
the
that.
Jedi nap, Luke teaches his students the Jedi nap, which is kind of a meditative, regenerative thing. And also, even if you remember in the Truce of Bakura, Luke was working on that as well when he was stuck in the sick bay from the lightning wounds from Palpatine. He was trying to learn how to heal himself as well. So Luke knows how to do it a little bit, but he doesn't have the talent like she does. And what I like about her in the story, first of all, I like her character a lot, and she's going to be around for quite a while, guys. But she kind of leads when Luke's in this coma. She leads the group, and I really like that.
The next time I'm having a long afternoon, I'm going to tell somebody I need to go have a Jedi nap and just see what face they make at me. So Kip Duran trapped Luke inside his own mind at his own Jedi Academy in front of his other students. And then he took the super weapon, the Sun Crusher. It's a miniature Starkiller base, basically. It blows up a sun to destroy an entire planetary system.
Right.
Kip thinks he's going to sort of play both sides here, I guess.
does.
He's like, I'm going to use the dark side, but I'm going to be conscious of it and know that it's bad, but I'm doing bad for a good reason, and I'm going to come back from it. So
Yeah,
he takes this.
He's like, I'm going to use this raw power to kill bad guys, and then I'll come back. It'll be fine. I'll just come back. I'll drop this
it'll
like
be
it's a
fine.
tool.
Don't worry about it.
Like he's treating it like it's just a tool you pick up and you're done with. You throw it away. Dumb of him.
Yeah, so he takes the Sun Crusher to not the heart of the Empire, because a lot of the Empire is still holed up in the deep core systems, but there's a very important and big Imperial training facility on the planet Corrida, and Kip shows up. He's like, "Hey, Empire, bye." It wasn't quite like that in the audiobook. It wasn't quite that abridged. But Kip actually does show up with intent to the Corrida system, because that is the last known location of his brother. Is it Zeth? Z-E-T-H or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his brother was conscripted into the Imperial Army as a stormtrooper, and that's his last known whereabouts for Kip. So that's kind of Kip's emotional tie here. And we know that Kip is acting out of pure emotion in all these circumstances because what he's doing. I mean, he's like, I'm going to go use a super weapon on the bad guys because I have the dark side powers and I'm going to use them for good and that sort of thing. But his brother is a really interesting element in this part of the story, Mike. I really like the brother thing.
And what's so hilarious is Kip's like, I'm going to go into the system. I think they know what the Sun Crusher is. I'm going to say, hey, where's my brother? And believe whatever they tell me and then react from there. Right. So when Kip says, hey, I'm looking for Zeth Duran, he's my brother, blah, 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 tell me where he is or I'll kill you all. Somebody just lies to him. They say, he died in a training exercise. Right.
It's pretty good.
They didn't even bother to look up what actually happened to the guy. They're just like, no, he died a long time ago in a rock slide in a mountain training exercise or something.
And I like too, Mike, that he's threatening them. He's like, I have the Sun Crusher, one of your most powerful weapons. And they're like, what's the Sun Crusher? Like, they're not even familiar with what that is, because if you guys remember in the first book, the Maw installation and the Kessel Run, the weapons they're building are so secretive. and they're separate from the rest of the Empire, so much so that Dala and her scientists didn't even know the Empire was defeated at Endor. So like they're just like, okay, the Sun Crusher, just lie to this kid, get him out of here. You know, it's a little fighter, basically.
Yeah.
They're laughing at it in a way. So
to their own detriment, because Kip foolishly takes them at their word and is like, fine, I'm gonna blow up your sun. And they say, what now?
yeah, what do you
And then he shoots torpedoes into their sun. He's like, you have like 2 hours to live.
Right.
Good luck getting out of the system.
It's pretty intense way to start this book. And you know what's really interesting as they actually figure out that he's being legitimate and the pandemonium starts happening, and another officer actually gets on the line and calls Kip and is like, I know your brother comes. He's with me right now.
That's when they say, "Oh, you mean that Zeth Duran? We know who that guy is."
Oh, I thought you meant the other Zeth Duran. Oh no, yeah. We'll tell you where he is if you just retract the weapon, basically. And Kip's like, nope, it's I can't stop it. The reaction has begun.
I can't unfire the torpedoes I just shot at this thing.
Yeah.
So they actually get his brother on like communication with him, and his brother figures out, wait, am I talking to my younger brother Kip that I haven't seen in 10 or 12 years?
Right. And these are pretty interesting and emotional scenes, right? Because then Kip immediately realizes it is his brother, and they recognize each other, and Kip starts making a beeline for the planet because he's like, I've made a huge mistake. And this is actually like, we're kind of poking fun at this, but like, this is an emotional thing for Kip because he was dumb in doing this, but like now the potential he's going to kill his own brother because he was selfish and wanted to destroy an entire Imperial base. And what happens next, Mike? What happens when he gets to the planet?
Yeah, so he can't stop the Karidan sun from exploding. So he's like, well, I'm going to keep talking to Zeth and this one comm officer and try to get Zeth off the planet. And I guess he was going to maybe take this comm officer with him because he knew something about the Empire, or just because he was with Kip. So they're trying to do this, last second escape before the system explodes. Kip is in an invincible super weapon. Like what do they call it? Quantum armor. It was like
armor.
Molecular armor in Dark Empire, quantum armor or something.
Right.
In this one, some sort of impenetrable armor. Like they can't shoot the Sun Crusher down.
Right.
So he's like, I'm just going to go pick you up. But it is a small ship, so he has to get down to the planet and everything. And basically, Kip fails in spectacular fashion.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, Mike. I mean, what a way to start a book. So the officer tries to jump on the Sun Crusher and basically leave Kip and his brother behind. Basically, it's like a scuffle ensues on the down ramp from the Sun Crusher, basically. Yeah. And Kip and the officer fight. Basically, the planet starts blowing up, and before Kip can grab his brother, reach out and grab his brother, it's already happening, and the Sun Crusher is shot basically away. It's blown away by this.
So in the audiobook, I'm interested to see if this is different, because you said you read the first half of the book. In the audiobook, he's using like the Sun Crusher's tractor beam to try and pull Zeth in as he's leaving. Okay, is that still consistent?
Yeah.
Okay,
that sounds correct. But
so basically, Kip watches his brother trapped in this
awful
force field, be disintegrated by the force of a supernova.
Gosh,
that he caused.
Right. Talk about some dark side. He's experiencing the dark side now. Tragedy.
So you blew up your brother in the supernova.
Yeah.
Insert Captain America gif here.
After putting your Jedi master and friend in a Sith coma. And
so you're kind of a dark side dirtbag at this point.
What's really interesting though, Mike, in this story, Kip still thinks he's not evil. Like he's not like Anakin, like execute Order 66. Like he still thinks he's using the dark side as a tool. And he's like, Exar Kun doesn't control me. You know what I mean? And this is kind of a moment that kind of shakes him. It kind of wakes him up a little bit from what he's doing. He's
a little, but he also thinks that, well, just because I'm aware I'm using the dark side, that means it's okay and I'll be able to recover from it, when we all know that's not the case as readers or listeners.
He's very naive. Yeah. So that's how the book starts, is Luke in the coma, his students not knowing what to do, and then Kip at the same time doing some bad stuff. And a lot of people die, Mike.
A lot of people die. An entire star system dies.
Oh, it's awful.
It is an Imperial controlled system, but if you remember in A New Hope, Obi-Wan feels the Force, feels through the Force of the death of everyone on Alderaan.
Yes.
Well, the shockwave of the destruction of the Karita system sort of awakens Luke back in the corner of his own mind.
Yes, he does. This is a really interesting tie-in, of course, these two things happening simultaneous. All of Luke's students feel it to a degree, probably not the level that Luke does. And they're all kind of in anguish. Streen, if I remember now, is like basically screaming. Streen is now being plagued by the Dark Man, which we now know as Exar Kun as a reader, but they don't know Exar Kun. They just know the Dark Man. So he moved on from Gentor Streen, and so Streen is just losing his mind because he's being plagued by the Dark Man. And then these voices cry out. And then we have a Luke, like a movie moment where all the sound sucks out and then it goes to the person, right? You know, that sound. And we have Luke just kind of like instantly awake in a out of body situation. Luke is essentially in something kind of like the netherworld of the Force, looking at his body and looking at his students reacting in pain kind of to them feeling the voices crying out as well and dying.
Yeah, if you are a Marvel film fan, which even if you're not necessarily a fan, if you saw the first Doctor Strange movie, if you think back to the scene where Doctor Strange is on the astral plane,
right,
looking in, talking to whatever Rachel McAdams' character's name is, I can't remember right now, but he sees his body on the operating table and he's able to communicate with her in spirit form. That's essentially what Luke is trying to do. He sees everybody,
right,
and it's like, hey, what's going on? Why am I there? Why are you guys over there? But nobody can hear him.
Yeah, he's like, can you hear me? And a little moment I really like, and I'm glad this made this into the audiobook. Mike, I actually checked it. His little mini scene with R2 at this moment. He even tries to wake R2 because after Luke finds out no one can hear him, the students go back to their rooms to rest because this tragic, they don't even know what they're feeling, Mike. That's what's kind of crazy too. They don't know the Obi-Wan ism, that thing we mentioned, the hearing voices. They just know that people died and they just feel awful. And I think one of the students says, "Oh, I think it was Kip," which is kind of interesting. But then Luke has,
it's a real big leap there.
Well, they know that he did some stuff before he left, but they don't know to what extent and how. But then Luke his body's on the table and Luke's looking around the room. And he's like, "What can I do?" And we have a cute little scene here with Luke and R2 where R2's actually like checking on Luke's body periodically, and he's doing the sad R2 moan.
Boop, boop,
And
boop.
Luke even tries to like use the Force with all of his might, his highest level Force push on R2 to let R2 know he's there. And it says, you know, it does the tiniest of like a ding on R2's dome, and R2 turns and was like, "Oh, must have been nothing," and moves on and is still sad about his master being essentially dead almost. Leia comes at this point to Yavin to check on Luke as well. And everyone's so worried about Luke. And Leia also felt the disturbance in the Force, which I think is relevant to mention.
Yeah. And she doesn't come alone.
That's right.
Leia comes with Han and the twins at this point. Jason and Jaina are with them when this disturbing development in the Karita system happens.
Yeah, and Leia has to very somberly explain that Uncle Luke is not dead, but he's not coming back anytime soon. And it's kind of hard to tell your kids that. And Han and Leia piece together that actually, what I find is really interesting is Leia's like, who could have done this to Luke? Like, what sort of student could have done this? And Han's like, it was Kip.
Han's like, I know. It's the one other character I've met in these 3 books.
Han's just like knows in his gut. We got the Han smuggler gut. He knows. I think he's been seeing flashes of it in Kip, but so basically Han concocts a plan with Leia. He says, I gotta go find Kip, Leia. I have to stop him if I can. And that's where Han's story starts in this.
So Han goes off to find Kip.
Yep.
While Leia and the kids stay on Yavin.
Right.
Yavin 4.
And Han actually meets up with Lando, and they settle their differences.
which is another thing we'll talk about in a
But
little
Lando goes with Han to find Kip as well.
because Lando had to be in the story for some reason.
I'm fine with it. I think him and Han have some pretty good moments in these books.
No, they don't. I think this book is a pretty big detriment to Han and Lando, actually. But we'll talk about that later in the show. I'm going to stay on Yavin 4 right now, because once Han leaves, the spirit of Exar Kun thinks he's going to get that Skywalker once and for all.
Right. Because, so we have a really interesting scene here, Mike. It's probably the most important scene to talk about for Luke. Luke actually encounters Exar Kun in this netherworld of the Force, this astral plane, and he actually finally sees Exar Kun, other than the time he saw him for a couple seconds when he, lost to Kip and Exar Kun and got Force comaed. A weird combo of Sith lightning, Kylo Ren's freeze, and kind of like black energy. That's what we find out actually froze Luke. It was Luke tried to hold it back with the Force, and he couldn't hold it back long enough, and it just basically overtook him. But now Luke encounters Exar Kun, and we get to see this villain that we basically heard about mainly for the last 2 books.
That's right, and they basically have like a smack talk battle on the astral plane. That Exar Kun, in terms of a smack talk fight, wins because he's like, I've been here for 4,000 years.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of time to learn how to mess with your real body from this plane. Just sit back and watch while I just basically not only kill you, but destroy everything you love, and you're just forced to watch it from this netherworld or astral plane. It's pretty good dark side Sith bad guys ranting. It is, but it's also sort of like cartoonish, like mustache twirling villain kind of business.
He's kind of just like an evil genie. Like, like a
he's
djinn.
like a guy who's been trapped alone in a spirit realm for 4,000 years, bent on revenge. He's gone a little off his rocker.
He is. And we learned that Exar Kun was essentially, he was so powerful that they couldn't actually kill him. So what the Jedi of the past did, as in this is pre Old Republic, Mike. This is like the era right before the Old Republic.
They call it the Great Sith War.
Yes. They essentially, what do we want to call it? Light side Jedi Ghostbuster him, basically, to this realm.
I like that. They try to light side Ghostbuster him, but he creates Harry Potter Horcruxes at the last second to avoid being totally destroyed, and instead is banished to this ethereal plane.
Right. And I like that he is smack talking Luke a lot, and Luke is just so confused at this point. He's like, "Oh, don't worry, Skywalker. Like after the first 2,000 years, you start to actually enjoy it, or you can handle it." He's like, "If you don't lose your mind," he said, "if you don't lose your mind." So we're kind of led to believe that maybe he lost his mind a little over the 2,000 years, which would make sense. But Luke and him can't actually. He can't actually affect Luke really in this world very much, which is kind of the interesting part.
That's right. Not while Luke's body is still alive.
Exactly.
So Exar Kun decides to turn the planet of Yavin, or Yavin 4 is a moon, right? Fourth moon of Yavin. Yeah. He decides to turn the moon of the planet Yavin against him. And he sends 3 double-headed dragon bird things
Right.
under his influence to infiltrate the temple and kill Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, and without getting too heady and too Star Wars Encyclopedia-ish, but this is something we see return even in canon and Clone Wars and things like that. We just dark side influenced creatures. You know how the balance of the Force is in the universe. There's just different energies, but he essentially finds, you know, it'd be like that snake that lives in Yoda's dark side cave, and he possesses it. You know, he possesses it, and yeah, he comes to kill Luke in a very similar way to like the episode 2 trying to assassination of Padme, just kind of dropping creatures.
That was the first thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought of too. Just dropping creatures through the blinds that are venomous that will kill, you know, instantly kill you. And then we have a strange scene here, like this to begin. But Luke's body is now just laying there, and Luke just has to watch as these creatures come for him.
Yeah. So Luke's body was being visited by his niece and nephew, Jason and Jaina Solo. Right. And then these dark side assassin double dragons appear.
Mm-hmm. And Luke realizes that, guess what? The only person who can actually hear him is the children. And this was another thing I thought was really interesting, like, because I remember this made me think of one of those great Yoda scenes from the prequels, where Yoda working with the younglings, and how Yoda and Obi-Wan can't figure out this whole like star cluster like problem, and why Kamino would never be listed.
How embarrassing.
And Yoda just asks the kids, and he's just like, basically they're more attuned to the Force in different ways, and they don't think like adults do. And somehow Luke can actually reach out and speak to his niece and nephew. And he says, guys, don't freak out. I'm a ghost. I'm okay though. I'm here. And they actually are like, Uncle Luke, is that you? So,
except in the audiobook version, it's a middle-aged man doing his best. Uncle Luke, is that you?
Well,
which like I appreciated, but was also very hilarious. Yeah. So what ensues is a very cool action scene. Luke sends Jaina to get help from the other students. And then Luke essentially, he doesn't possess, but he like influences all the actions of the toddler Jason to pick up his lightsaber and defend his body against these creatures. Yeah. Which is, I think is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. It's strange just to hear it out of context. Like if you told somebody this scene, but I think if you're explaining like we do, it is pretty well executed. I thought of it as like the dad holding like the top and bottom part of the baseball bat, you know, and helping the child swing when you're on the T-ball.
That's real good.
And so like he's helping Jason hold the saber without dropping it. And he's basically guiding his actions through like little mini force pushes and stuff, you know.
But what outsiders or people in just the regular realm or universe we ever see is a toddler flipping around and swinging a lightsaber like a Jedi defending Luke Skywalker's body.
Yeah. Killing these reptiles.
It's very cool. And it's ultimately successful.
Yeah, and what's cool is Jaina gets Jason. It's not like he's just overpowered little child. Actually, Jaina does come back with the other students, and Streen comes in, who we know now is one of the most established students, and he helps defend as well Luke's body, and they finish off the rest of the reptiles. And that's when they kind of figure out what is going on. And Jason's like, Uncle Luke is speaking to me right now. And they're all just truly incredible. The mind of a child is, as Yoda would say, like everyone's just shell shocked. Like, how can we not hear Master Luke, but this kid can, you know? It's also kind of a precursor to what we're learning is that, of course, the Skywalker family, but Jason and Jaina are very, very attuned to the Force. We're learning.
That's true. Yeah. So essentially after this, if we're going to fast forward a little bit, we make it to the final encounter with Exar Kun, because he decides, well, as long as there are other Jedi here protecting Skywalker, I need to deal with them first.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the other Jedi steel themselves for this encounter. There's a lot of conversations, which are interesting, between Streen, who you've talked about.
Silgal.
There's Dorsk. Silgal and Dorsk 81, the 81st clone of somebody, which is kind of a cool character.
Yeah, we haven't talked about him yet. He'll come up again too, but yeah, he's a kind of a new race in a way. I mean, clone, it's a whole interesting thing, but we'll come back to him in the future.
What's the former Night Sister's name?
I can't remember her name.
The one that's not Tenel Ka?
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, the one that's not Tenel Ka.
Yeah.
That was in the Courtship of Princess Leia. She's there as well. And Exar Kun does come and attack one final assault, I guess.
Yeah, and basically these remaining 10 students, armed with Luke's lightsaber and the lightsaber that Gantoris built under the influence of Exar Kun, they hold hands and they glow blue, and they cross those lightsabers over Care Bear or Captain Planet style. They like cross those lightsabers over the shadow of Exar Kun and kill him.
They kind of exercise him. They kind of Ghostbusters him again.
Yeah.
They basically repeat what the Jedi did 4,000 years before. And Luke's kind of, we got to mention too, Luke is kind of with them. He's behind them in the spirit realm, essentially just helping them like he was with Jason.
And watching.
Yeah, watching this unfold, but he's also kind of spiritually helping them like he was with Jason. And they kind of Kamehameha him and away and to forever.
Yeah, and it's also a little bit like Jaws 2, where they trick the shark into biting the underwater power cable, where they cross the two lightsabers and he just kind of sparks and dies.
Right.
It's a little weak, honestly, if it took like 1,000 Jedi to kill his physical form for 10 noobs to be able to,
with Luke helping, but yeah,
vanquish his ethereal form. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later.
It serves the story though. It served like
it serves the story, and it was a cool scene to listen to on the audiobook, because he Exar Kun like starts to like force choke everybody, and Streen learns a little bit of what he's learned to help everyone breathe. And like in the earlier episodes on this trilogy, we've mentioned how these Jedi students kind of fill roles of video game characters in parties.
Yeah,
Streen is sort of like the healer. Silgal's another healer. Streen is acting like a healer by helping everyone breathe here. He's more like a wizard, I guess.
Yeah, he does some other cool things too. If you remember Streen, when they found him on Bespin, he can manipulate the wind some, and he kind of goes full Storm or X-Men. He like opens up the windows of the temple and like blows the wind around, like as he's trying to. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, right? We have the witches actually being physically defensive because they're actual warriors.
And there's another one who is filling the role of the bard. What is her name? I cannot remember for the life of me.
Oh, the one who's been studying on the Chunthor and stuff.
No, that's one of the knights. The one that Luke told, you don't have great Jedi potential, but you are attuned to the Force, and she's trying to be a historian and telling stories about Jedi through song. She's literally like a D&D bard. I can't. What is her name? So he's got Tion. That's her name. She's the student who had limited Force ability, but she was like a historian. So she's essentially filling the role of the D&D bard. I like how all of these students are filling like different roles here. But they essentially hold hands, glow blue, and defeat Exar Kun.
Yeah, they essentially channel the light side to just kind of exercise him in a way. And it also reminded me too, Mike, of kind of like Professor Xavier, like behind all of his students and all of his students combining all their powers in different ways to defeat a big bad guy, kind of first class ish, all that sort of thing. Because Luke is there, like we said, guiding everybody. He's kind of supercharging everybody's force the best way. That's all he can really do. He can't do anything else. And I also really do. It is visually cool seeing Luke's lightsaber, the green lightsaber, our Canon Cantina logo, and the Gantoris lightsaber.
Ignite the green. Shout out to Steel.
Yeah. And our the Gantoris lightsaber, which we know is very cool now, the silver white blade that extends to longer length and goes purple. That's all they have. So they're using everything they have.
Well, And to add to that visual like awesomeness, Kirana T, the former Night
Right,
Sister,
that's her name.
We remembered her name, that is holding Gantorus's lightsaber. They describe her as wearing like this dragon scale
Right.
armor, which is super cool. So she's like
From-
the fighter.
Yeah.
So we've got like fighter, wizard, bard, warrior. Cam Solasar's there. What would he be like? Former Darksider. He's kind of the necromancer,
Kinda.
I guess. If we're gonna, if we're gonna like dip into Diablo or whatever.
It's pretty good.
But it's neat how all the students kind
Yeah,
of fill
she's
these
got that
different video game roles.
Dathomirian armor from the planet from Courtship of Princess Leia. Yeah, so they defeat him, and he's gone. And
it's a good thing they defeated him right then, because Kip was about to blow Han Solo up
I know.
with a torpedo that would destroy a solar system. So, like we sort of alluded to earlier, we're doing our best to focus
Gotta
on
keep
Luke,
the story.
but there's a lot of other stuff that happens in this book.
Yeah, Han's trying to talk some sense into
so-
Kip, and he's flying the Falcon straight towards the Sun Crusher.
That's right. Han found Kip in the Sun Crushers, trying to talk sense into him on the comm. Kip's like, no, and is about to kill Han, but then he wakes up when the influence of Exar Kun is removed, essentially,
Yeah,
right?
that is a pretty cool scene too. And once again, there's a lot of interesting things going on simultaneous in these books, and it does tie together well. He does kind of snap out of it. Like it's kind of like the exorcism happens, not inadvertently. All Kip's peers save him because it does relinquish some control. Clearly, Kip is still under the influence of the dark side a little bit, but lesser so now. But he's literally not possessed by Exar Kun anymore. So he snaps out of it, and he hears Han, his father figure, and Lando, his cool uncle, talking to him on the comms. Right? He's like, "Kid, snap out of it. I know you're better than this. Like I know." Like Han's basically like, "I understand where you're coming from. It's wrong, but I understand. Like I know you better than anybody else at this point," which is true in the story.
So Kip sort of snaps out of it, and Luke definitely snaps out of it.
Luke gets sucked back into his body.
Yeah, that's right. Luke sort of wakes up and kind of does his best to describe to everyone what he's seen.
Yeah.
But at this point, Kip returns to Yavin. He doesn't go straight to Yavin 4, or does he?
Not.
This is where the timeline of specific events starts to get muddled, because all of this is resolved in the first half of the book. And then Kevin J. Anderson was like, this is a short book. I need to make up some other crap to fill the last half of this book. So the last half of this book is...
They take Kip back to the New Republic, is what you're... With the Sun
okay,
Crusher.
so Kip goes back to the New Republic briefly, where they say, go to the principal, Luke Skywalker, and see what he tells you to do. So Kip goes back to Yavin 4. We're going to talk about that again in a minute. But while all of this is going on...
Oh, yeah, we got more stories.
There is Admiral Dala with her secret Imperial fleet, recently escaping Kip's attempt to destroy them, going back to the Maw cluster, because of course they are. That's the only place they know to go. There's a Death Star prototype under control of some renegade scientists.
At the Maw cluster.
There's Wedge and his dumb girlfriend back at the Maw cluster because they had to shoehorn him into this book. Chewie is with some ground troops because Chewie has to be in this book.
Hey, I like anytime Chewie gets his own little mini spotlight. I like it.
It has to be good, but not bad like this.
Yeah, it has to be Chewie in Aftermath 2. Good. There we go.
Yeah.
Chuck Wendig.
So I did a terrible job of summarizing what else is going on, because I don't remember all the details, because there are so many different threads in this story that have to get wrapped up. Maybe Jesse can do a better job than I do.
Well, we mentioned Han and Lando take Kip to Coruscant to basically be dealt his punishment by the new Republic. Han then takes Lando to Kessel because Lando's like, I need my ship back. And I also, by the way, Han, I kind of bought Kessel. And Han's like, what?
That's right. Yeah.
And he's like, I made a little investment now with more Thule dealt with. And so they go back to Kessel and they meet up with Mara Jade because he reveals
Lando and Mara Jade are entering into a business.
I like
partnership.
this. So Lando is kind of the new Talon Card, and to like
Lando wishes it was more than the business partnership.
he does. And so they go back and they meet Mara there, and they realize that Morris Duel from the first book, the villain, one-eyed bad guy, is still there, and they deal with him. Let's just say like that. But like they
That's
try to
fair. They deal with him.
they try to tie everything back from the first and second book. But you know, Lando and Mara do start a new Smugglers Alliance, which is actually an important point of this. Lando gets his ship back, and they start the new version of the Smugglers Alliance, which will come up all sorts of times in the book. But we get back to Dala.
That is important.
We get back to Dala, which is very interesting. So, did we talk much, Mike, last time about Dala's fleet being damaged?
Not really.
I think we missed out on that, and that was actually pretty big.
So Admiral Dala started this trilogy with 4 Star Destroyers. At this point, she's down to 2.
And Kip.
And she would leave the Maw cluster, do something.
Yeah, she was doing guerrilla strikes,
Leave the Maw, then come back.
Kill everyone on Dantooine, come back.
So, well, again, we'll talk about this later. Admiral Dala is there at the end for some reason with a prototype Death Star.
No. Sorta. You're getting it. The good and bad mixed up too much.
The bad and bad.
Well, last time I don't think we talked about it very much, but last time it was Kip and the Suncrusher, right? That destroyed the rest of fleet.
He destroyed the
system by their
the second of her 4 Star Destroyers. One was destroyed in book 1, and then she lost the second one at the end of book 2. Yes,
I thought he destroyed 2, and then all that was left was the Gorgon, her flagship. And what happens is,
oh, you're right. One, like, she thought 2 made it out, but 1 didn't survive the.
What's really cool is they had no time to react to Kip attacking them, and Kip was all angry, emo, dark side. And Dala, this is another cool Dala thing. She just had them make a random jump, and they barely made it out of there, Mike. And actually, her flagship, the Gorgon, is kind of like the Chimera to Thrawn. It's badly damaged now, but she's angry, and she hears that the New Republic is attacking the Maw. So she kind of pulls a Vader from Rogue One, where she just jumps in the middle of the battle and just starts destroying Wedge's fleet. And that's the important part.
Jesse makes that sound way cooler than it is. This is a very terrible story point.
I like all the Dala stuff. I do. But she only has 1 Star Destroyer, and it's damaged pretty bad. But she comes back to she comes back to her house, and she's like, "Why are you in my house? Why are you in my house?"
Okay, well,
but that's the big battle.
Let's steer it back to Luke. Just to wrap up the main Luke story. So basically, the New Republic says, "Go see the principal, Luke Skywalker. He'll determine your punishment." And Luke's like, "Well, I'm a terrible teacher. Why don't I send you into this nexus of dark side energy and see what you do?"
That's good,
right?
Yeah, that's basically what he says.
Basically, Kip goes into one of Exar Kun's old temples,
the one that would the
and it's
found.
It's a recreation of Luke's cave
Yes.
encounter in Empire Strikes Back, where he encounters the dark side and we see what happens. Kip does succeed. He does reject the dark side influences or impulses to attack or use weapons, which turns out to be the correct choice because Exar Kun was already destroyed. Kip is just finding some peace here with the death of his brother and everything. And he emerges victorious. And Luke's like, "Oh, holy crap, he made it out victorious."
Yeah. He's like, he answered all the questions right. Kip's like, "Do I take my weapons?" He's like, "That's completely up to you." And Kip leaves his weapons. He passed all the little mini quizzes, and then he went into the dark side temple cave, like you said, and made it out unscathed. In fact, maybe did better potentially than Luke did in the Dagobah cave. Luke was pretty freaked out by that vision.
Maybe.
But I don't know. And we're not exactly told what he's shown in the abridged audiobook. which is
That's
could
true.
be probably relevant, but we weren't told it because abridged.
So we will, in a few minutes, get to wrapping up the story threads of the series as a whole. But jumping back to our questions, how do the events and characters Luke encounters in this story impact his development as a hero? Well, I think that the encounter with his niece and nephew is pretty great. How they defend him, and he realizes he's got a strong connection with him.
Right.
And also, he does grow a lot in his connection with Kip.
Yeah. And
For sure. Here in his last cave temple or whatever.
well, and he faces an ancient Sith Lord in the netherworld of the Force, which is interesting, something we haven't seen happen before. And
yes, also Exar.
And though Exar Kun might be, especially in the abridged audiobook, a little thin, a little like Mike said, mustache twirling. I think
I picture him as Waluigi.
I kind of think of that too. I do like the way Luke deals with them. Luke doesn't engage any of that. Luke is just pure Luke with him, which White Knight. But more than that, he's not feeding into it, and he's not giving into despair, because he's like, no, my students can do this. They can survive this. I've trained, I really believe they can survive this. And now that Luke knew that he could, help and influence his nieces and nephews, he's like, sure, I can influence my students. Also, Luke grows a lot with Silgal, because she kind of becomes a leader. I said this story, and she advances her healing powers through working with Luke at before the events in this book, and after the events, he comes back to his body. Some good stuff with Luke, and obviously him and Leia have some nice moments too. When he was in the coma, also, Leia's care for him. And then obviously when he comes back, later on in the, when he comes back to life, him and Leia have some interactions.
That's
so
right.
that's quite a bit. The next question though, do you want to jump to our Last Jedi question?
I do, yeah. So would Luke's experiences in this story make him different than Luke we meet in The Last Jedi? In our previous episode, we thought they were fairly consistent.
Yeah.
Until the whole trapped in the corner of your mind bit. But I think this one is very different than the Luke we met in The Last Jedi, because I remember a specific line from the end of the audiobook when Luke has the realization, I've lost 2 students to the dark side already. I might lose a few more. And then he basically says, and that's okay.
I don't think he says that's okay.
No, I forget the exact wording, but in the abridged audiobook, it essentially was, I've lost some, I'll lose more, I'm going to power through. And that is very different than Luke we meet in The Last Jedi, who, as soon as he loses his first student to the dark side, gives it up, quits, decides the Jedi need to end. So I think that right there is our primary point of divergence between Legends and canon.
And this will be interesting to look at, Mike, as we proceed through the chronological story of Legends, because I think, yes, as of right now, that's definitely the case. But I think as Luke advances through these stories and has more students and more things happen with his students, I think it's going to get closer to The Last Jedi, because the Luke towards the end, especially of Legends, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, maybe Luke at the end of Legends only had to lose 50 students to get to the point of losing
50.
one.
Canon. His one. The only thing with that though, Mike, is the one in canon is his family.
Okay, I'm going to throw that right back at you, because you've brought up Jason Solo and the dark side 30 times in our episodes so far, and he's family too.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's a good. No, Kylo Ren. We obviously see now going through this, and we'll talk with Jason later. But Mike, you said this in the first and second episode. Kip and Jason together are very much Kylo Ren. And they've obviously taken the elements they like of Kip and the elements they like of Jason, and like I said, trim the fat and made one character, and that's a good decision. We're gonna see more of Jason in the future, so he's obviously 4 right now. So
I agree with your conclusion that there are elements of Jason and Kip and Kylo Ren. I don't know that we can say that when J.J. Abrams wrote episode 7 and Rian Johnson wrote episode 8, I don't know that we can say they looked back at those characters specifically and pulled the parts that they liked and incorporated them into one character, because we don't know if they read those books. It's kind of the parts they took are fairly obvious or surface level. You know what I mean? Like, how do we make a conflicted bad guy that's part of the good guy family? Well, let's kind of pull these things.
Yeah,
So,
but it's also
these two things aren't they're not mutually exclusive or anything. I just don't want to say for like definitively that, oh, they liked this part of Jason and this part of Kip, so they took it. I don't think that's the case. I think they were just like, well, these would be interesting parts of a conflicted character, and they happen to be traits of Jason and Kip. Does
yeah,
that
I
make
think you're
sense?
saying. I'm just saying, like, the similarities are uncanny. We know that, but it's
Yeah.
I think this is how I think they did The Force Awakens. I think they developed the essence of new characters, and then they went to writing the scripts. And I think the essence of Kylo Ren was Han Solo's son, right? Step one, like Han and Leia's son, very powerful in the Force, conflicted, similar to things we've seen in canon and Legends before, does these X things. Now go write the script, right? And I think they started there, and I think they did that for Rey, Finn, and Poe too. But obviously, Rey, Finn, and Poe were much looser. I think Kylo was the only one confined to some sort of essence, and I think that might have been the essence. I think they were just like, hey, we've done the kids of Han and Leia before. These are what we didn't like. This is what we did like. I don't know. That might have been part of it too.
I don't think that Lawrence Kasdan or maybe John did, but I know that Lawrence Kasdan never read these books.
Yeah.
I'm willing to put lots of money on that. But I do agree with everything you just said. They took those core points that they wanted for Ben Solo, Kylo Ren. Do you remember how awesome it was when we first saw episode 7 that they just, like, right away when Snoke said that, he basically looked at the audience and said, "Your father is Han Solo." We didn't have to wait for a big reveal.
I remember that.
Or anything.
That was pretty
They
wild.
Just said it right away.
That was pretty.
It was great.
Yeah,
right?
it was new for Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely didn't string you along for a movie and a half on who's the father. No, you just Snoke turns and looks at the camera and tells you, which I loved.
And guess what, Mike? We're gonna return on this conversation, I'm sure, in the future, because we're gonna dive deeper into all these subjects, Kylo Ren, Kip, and Jason in the future, because we're gonna have more of all three of them, I assume, in the future. So there you go. This is the beginning. This is just us looking at it as infancy, and I do like another tie to the Kylo Ren thing. I do like the even though it feels. Like you said, Kip feels weak at times. I do like the Han and Kip father-son relationship as well.
Totally. And I think that was well established in the first book.
Yes, like we said, that was the Han shining moment. That was the Indiana Jones Han book in the Mines of Kessel with Kip. So Luke grows through Kip. He actually learns some things through more than just seeing Kip go to the dark side, but like he's aware, first of all, that this can happen now, that the fall for somebody that with that much raw power is even possible. I don't think Luke knew how tempting that was, maybe, and that might have been part of this as well. Like, I don't think
well, and like I agree with what you said, but we have to consider, remember in Dark Empire how Luke was turned to the dark side with a paragraph.
yeah
So it just depends on what sources you look at and all that stuff. But you are absolutely right.
Like I said, the comic books, I think at most we look at them with 50%, story canonical linings up, and that was pretty obvious when we read Dark Empire 2, and it was clearly just a cash grab that everyone ignored.
Yeah, but Luke learned a lot through this series about the Force and about himself. I just think that coming to the realization, I lost some, I will probably lose a few more to the dark side, is not the right thing to learn from his experiences so far.
Yeah.
Like for us in the timeline that we've recorded these and read or listened to these, it's been like 2.5 weeks. I feel like Luke lost 2 students to the dark side and an entire star system was destroyed in 2.5 weeks. And he's going forward with the attitude of, I'll probably lose some more in the next several years. How bad can that be?
Yeah. That's true. It's a tough spot for him to be in too, especially after seeing like his good students, good as in morally good, how well they're doing and how they basically saved him with having no lightsabers or anything. Right. And then he had this just pure raw power student, Kip, that went off the rails. So, but Kip's got like 2 dads now, Han and Luke. So they can keep him in line. They can take turns, but punishing, taking away privileges, whatever. You're the bad guy this week, Luke. You're the bad guy this week, Han. So that's the end of Luke's story. Let's finish up the rest of the book. And then we've got some criticisms and some things we liked after that. So we have this cool battle at the end, I suppose. It starts cool. Like it's in the Maw installation. We have Dala hyperspace in, which I just like. I always like that. That was my favorite moment of Rogue One. when the Devastator literally hyperspaced into the middle of the Rebel fleet and ships are literally breaking up on its like hull. I love it.
The Last Jedi detractors would be like ripping you to shreds right now.
Why? Oh,
just because ships are trying to go into hyperspace and blah 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 blah.
Yeah. We've talked about this before, Mike. Star Wars is fantasy and fun, good storytelling, and the sci-fi physics and all that stuff does not matter. It matters enough to a level, but no.
Oh, it absolutely doesn't matter in this book,
and we're going to get to that. So, Kip somehow, Kip learns that there's this battle going on and that Dala is still alive, and he gets in the Sun Crusher again. So we kind of wrapped up Kip's story in a pretty way with the Jedi training. So that Kip's going to make it out of this. We've kind of spoiled that for you, but before he actually goes back and talks with Luke and has his final test, and before the end of the book, which is Luke Kip stuff, which is great, we have this ridiculous battle, and Kip basically has a battle with the Maw installation, trying to save Wedge and all the other New Republic men. And it's a battle between the Sun Crusher and this
other New Republic soldiers. We don't know that they were all.
That's so right, Mike. Even though I didn't mean it in that way. Thanks for that.
I know you didn't mean it that way. I know you
troops.
didn't mean it that way. I'm bringing it forward 25 years.
Probably said men in this book.
It may have,
but yeah, he basically goes to save Wedge and Quizuk and Chewie and everyone that's in this battle. He takes it on himself. I'm going to save everybody because I'm the best Sun Crusher pilot. I'm the only one who knows how to use it. And we have a dumb battle between the Sun Crusher and this half-built prototype Death Star.
Well, it's the Sun Crusher, a half-built prototype Death
Krang
Star,
Corvettes,
and a Millennium Falcon that has landed on the prototype Death Star.
I forgot about that. Oh my goodness.
That involves space suits and bombs.
Just action movie stuff. Like this is literally just
action movie stuff. Well, to sort of tie it into another fandom, I think it's pretty universally accepted that Star Trek First Contact is the best Star Trek movie.
I thought that was Khan.
I
know what you mean
of
now.
The first
next generation
of the next
cast,
generation era,
100%.
And overall, it's between Khan and this one. But yeah, I meant of the Picard Star Treks. But it's kind of like that scene where Picard and Worf and whoever else go outside of the Enterprise. Lando is in a spacesuit
on the Death Star,
this thing, trying to plant bombs or whatever. It gets pretty silly.
We have basically the random introduction of a new villain. This villain's been around through the series, but not very much. He was one of the lead scientists of Dala's
Charles Sevron, who's got the worst
Weird voice.
on the audiobook.
Yeah, and there's a plot to once again have Imperial agents steal Anakin, which is Han and
Leia's. I didn't even realize we'd completely glossed
third
over
son.
That, but you're right.
He sends those out.
There are so many random plot threads
at the end of this book. At the end,
I'm not.
that were not in the beginning of this book and not in the other books, which is strange because there's so many things in this book that they tie directly to the first and second book so well, Mike. And there's other things they don't. But Anakin is safe by the end of this, but that happens as well. And Leia goes and beats people up and saves Anakin, and it gets crazy. Let's finish up the book though, Mike. They win the battle. We'll get into the logistics of the Sun Crusher versus the Death Star in a second. They win the battle, and the book does end in good ways. We see Leia, Han, Akbar, Wedge, Chewie, Mon Mothma, everyone on the Cathedral of the Winds from the first book, the place that Akbar crashed the B-wing, this religious citadel for these pterodactyl people on the planet Vortex.
The planet Vortex. I think they were just called the Vors.
Yeah, that's what I like to call them, though. That's why I always picture them. And they have a ceremony there. It's great. And Akbar is there, even though he had apprehension about it. But then we finish the book, of course, like we said, with Luke and Kip's father son. You pass the dark side test, and then Luke's, of course, sitting on the temple, like the end of the first book, and basically recounting everything that happened, as Mike said, thinking about the future as well. And that's how the book ends. That's everything. Let's get into some stuff.
So I hope you were not totally lost.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, but lace your gloves up, everybody, because we're finally done with this thing. We're going to the criticism corner, and I am ready. Ding ding! I'll put something like a boxing bell or something.
Yeah, there. Something. I'll think something.
Okay, so overall, I enjoyed the Jedi Academy trilogy. However, it should have been one long book, or maybe two books, focused on the Luke storyline.
So book one, finding
Luke,
the students.
Kip, Exarchon. Book one was fantastic. Yeah. I had a great time with it when we did our episode, and my enjoyment has steadily gone down as we've gone through the trilogy, just because I feel like stuff was added to make it 3 full books, when the story would be better served if it was shorter. So let me do my best to tell me if I miss anything. Okay. So we've got the Luke storyline that we've covered in detail, which I like, was pretty good. There's also Han and Lando playing cards with the Falcon again for no reason.
Right.
There's Akbar and his storyline of crashing a B-wing for a bad reason. Like I get the character development of Akbar. I do like that. But Akbar knew 50 better pilots than himself who should have done it. Anyway, there's Mon Mothma being poisoned. We've not even mentioned that.
That's by the same agents that try to capture Anakin. That kind of ties it together.
Which was my next point. The Ambassador Fergan from Karita who tries to go capture baby Anakin. There's Wedge Antilles being a bodyguard instead of a starfighter pilot for Quizooks. And there's one more.
Morth Duel.
There's 2 more. There's Morth Duel, the guy who double-crossed Han.
Very fleshed out in the first book.
And then there's Chewie.
Very fleshed out in the first book.
And there's Chewie being relegated to ground.
With commandos.
assault.
Chewie leading some commandos.
In this. And if you add to... So that's... I just counted 7 different plot threads. And that doesn't include Admiral Dala or anything. She's part... She is part of different... of those different threads at
also, Mike,
times.
we've got Kip's whole thread through all these books. Kip's frequently by himself.
I was counting him with Luke.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Frequently by himself.
Right. He is separated enough. That's a fair point. But basically, all those different story threads somehow wrap together a secret research facility for Star Destroyers a Death Star prototype when you'd already built one Death Star. Why did you build another? The Sun Crusher. There's too much happening
Way too much
in this book for it to be cohesive.
And like we said, the first 2 books in this series, very similar to the Thrawn trilogy. The pacing is great. They don't do too much. They give great character development. They introduce new characters.
I loved the first book.
This third book, as Mike said, it really does feel like the story was wrapping up after they defeated Exar Kun, and they were just going to be like, well, Dahl is still out there somewhere, and they would just end with that. And they just added all these extra plot threads. You're right.
Yeah, which I'm impressed, actually, that we were able to follow them listening to the abridged audiobook after I laid them out like that. But some of my biggest complaints here, and I've been looking forward to criticizing this for a while, I really liked Admiral Dalla in the first book, and I think I made that pretty clear. But after book 1, she's sort of wasted and turned into kind of an idiot. Because she leaves the Maw and then comes back and leaves the Maw and then comes back and leaves the Maw and then
she's doing guerrilla strikes against the New Republic. I mean, she only has a couple ships.
Right, but she always ends up back at the Maw when she doesn't need to be there. Another thing I wrote down as a pretty big criticism, the Death Star prototype, it's a pretty big rehash. They keep going back to the Maw installation and stuff like that. I mentioned in an earlier episode the New Republic's talent management problem, because Wedge and Lando are in this book are in this trilogy because they needed to fill pages, not because they filled an important role.
I liked Lando in first book on the casino planet.
First book,
Casino Planet,
okay, maybe, but and I agreed that the foundation of the Smugglers Alliance is important, but Lando being shoved in to play Sabak with Han to gain the Falcon back and then lose it again or whatever is really bad. Exar Kun goes out a little bit like a punk, honestly. I mentioned it sort of earlier in the show. It took 1,000 Jedi banding together to destroy him.
But that's when he was in his fully realized, everything. Body, everything.
Right.
Yeah. He's not this diluted version.
But then 10 noobs.
10 noobs.
But then 10 noobs destroyed this diluted version on Yavin. Like, I get it. I'm mostly fine with it. But just when you compare what ultimately ended Exar Kun to the scale of what they described back in the Great Sith War, it feels like he goes out kind of weak. And, okay, so you sent 3 of these reptile creature dragon things after Luke because you were trying to send some dangerous creatures on Yavin 4 after him. Why didn't you send 3 more or 3 more or 3
Just
more?
Keep sending
or
them over
3
and over
more?
again.
It's a dangerous freaking jungle planet. There's a lot of dangerous things there. Jason can only hold off so many. And again, I get it.
Whoa,
Movies,
I just forgot
storytelling,
something
whatever.
crazy that we've completely forgot that was kind of goofy but also kind of cool. When all the students banded together, they were stronger because they had Master Luke, right? They also had Voto Boss.
Oh, God, you're right.
So they had this ancient, powerful Grand Jedi Master join them as well from basically where Obi-Wan is, the Force Ghost world, and basically supercharge them. How did I forget that?
Yeah, because Exar Kun's master had to be there to watch him fail. Yeah, I forgot it too. For the most part, everything I've said so far is fairly minor. To me, I wish Admiral Dalla was portrayed better in the second and third book, and she is ultimately redeemed by future stories in Legends, which I'm fine with. But maybe the biggest thing I have a problem with, and maybe this is adult me versus not quite even teenage me first reading the story. Kip Duran has 0 repercussions in this book.
Right. In this third book.
In this series. He gets told, go to Luke, see what he says, and Luke's like, well, I saw you resist the dark side once after you already fell to the dark side, so technically you should be even. Let's keep training you as a Jedi. And then Kip goes on to be this great hero in Legends. He destroyed an entire star system of people. Yes, they were Imperials, or at least the planet Karita was. We don't know about anybody else in that system. He could have killed perfectly innocent people, just like Luke killed perfectly innocent people on the Death Star that were just contractors or engineers. I'm doing my best to make a Clerks reference here.
Kip's complicated, Mike. He's very complicated because I think he's very well established in these books, but he's like, you're right. His plot thread is really good, but the end of his plot thread is not. It's not dramatic enough. Like you said, he needs to be locked in jail. Something. Like, I feel like he's a really well fleshed out character, and the stuff was great in the first book with him and Han, the relationship, and then we get his relationship with Luke in the second book, and then we get his relationship with Exar Kun in the second book, and how he gets manipulated, and then, like you said, it's almost like Luke is like, well, I know you were possessed, and I'm gonna be super nice on you because I'm Luke, and because you're kind of like a son to me now. And you passed a couple quizzes. They're like, are you inebriated with the dark side? You know?
Yeah, no, he killed millions, if not billions, of people.
At least thousands.
They weren't all innocent. Yeah, I guess I actually intended to look up like as much information about the Karita system as I could before we recorded. Didn't have time, so maybe I'll do that later. But he killed a lot of people with the Sun Crusher. Most of them, it's fair to say, Imperials, had to be some innocents among them, including his brother, who was conscripted by force.
But that's good. I like that part a lot because...
And I do too, because it gives him character conflict. But my ultimate point is, he just went forward like a good guy, like nobody cared that he fell to the dark side, killed so many people, came right back, and everybody was like, hey, good to see you. Welcome back. And I think that sort of leads into... I know we can't finish the whole argument here, but a parallel to Kylo Ren in the sequel trilogy. He was complicit with the First Order, destroying 5 planets at once. And they were good guys and or innocent people. And Kylo Ren has rejected the light side twice now. Kip thought he was taking advantage of the dark side, always intending to come back to the light. Kylo Ren in episode 7 is actively avoiding the light side, trying to reject it. And he does it again in episode 8 after he kills Snoke and refuses to help Rey save the Resistance. So people like to draw comparisons here. And there are people hoping for Reylo or redemption of Kylo Ren in episode 9. I don't know how that happens because he has done basically as much damage to the galaxy as Kip Duran has, and has actively rejected redemption. Is that right?
To this point, yeah. More so than Kip.
Right, and episode 9 could make me look like a total idiot, but based on what we've seen so far, he had a chance in each movie to start himself down the path of redemption and rejected it each time. Once with his father, and then once with Luke.
True. Yeah, and we saw him not kill his mom in the second movie, but we're gonna see what happens with hopefully with that thread in the ninth Star Wars episode 9. How he ends with Leia, the best they can do.
I wish we lived in a different reality where we could see the original episode 9 when Carrie had not passed. Because
I'm sure they had something planned really good with him and her. You know what I mean? But I don't know, Mike. This leads to more, like you said, this is something that we'll return to in the future. This is more of a spiritual, moral question in a lot of ways too, because it's like, I mean, Star Wars is built on redemption. And the whole storyline of Vader and Anakin is this, and we've gotten to this before, but it's like, what's too far of, like, does Kip need to go to prison? Or does he need to be redeemed? Does Kip need to be somewhere in the middle? Because like you said, Kip the whole time was, 1, possessed by a literal Sith Lord. 2, actually,
true.
You said the whole time, not using it for power or, trying to go to the dark side. He was literally saying, this is just a temporary tool because I have to use these tools to save the people I care about. And I don't know, like, so that clearly makes Kylo Ren worse than Kip in my mind at this point. What we know about Kip and what we know about Kylo Ren. We're going to learn more about both of them as the show proceeds. But then you got the question of what's redeemable, what's not redeemable. So you and I have had this conversation off there too a lot. Like, what's
right, and
but
we're
it's a
going to
theme
have
of
it
Star
on air
Wars.
many more
It's
times.
one of the major themes of Star Wars.
You're right. It's absolutely a theme of Star Wars, and I think that the redemption of Anakin Skywalker worked because he died.
Yeah.
He didn't have to actually go to jail or face anybody.
Good point.
Kip was just for some reason given a get out of jail free card. I just don't think that storytelling wise, it is nearly interesting enough for Kylo Ren, Ben Solo to be redeemed as quickly as Kip Duran was, and be like, oh no, you're fine. Welcome back to the good guy side. Help us fix everything after everything that's happened in the first two movies.
We will return to this.
But that's definitely something I was thinking. Oh yeah, we are not done thinking about that. But the zero repercussions for Kip Duran was maybe my biggest takeaway as an adult listening to this story compared to reading it when I was a kid.
My biggest criticism of this is, like you said, Mike, this should have just been a story that focused on Luke and Kip's arc and how Han and Leia played into those arcs. It instead became like all this New Republic world building, Akbar character building, which is great because I'm a Akbar fanatic and a Mon Cala fanatic. And I remember reading this as a kid and getting so excited about Mon Cala, just learning about Mon Cala. It was so fun as a kid. And Mike, I played Star Wars Rebellion, the board game, the other day, and my friend immediately took over Mon Cala with Tarkin, and he built a giant Star Destroyer base on it, and I was so angry.
He knew how to strike at your
He's
heart.
like, the Mon Calamari people are building me Star Destroyers. What do you think about that? That's nice. And Tarkin's there, which is funny. But this is too much. Like, this should have been, the story with Luke is good. The story with Kip is good. The story with Kip is good too, even though he doesn't have repercussions. Like his arc with Luke and Han, and
I can even deal with like the lack of repercussions with him as long as he's tied into a concise story with Luke and maybe Han. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there.
We will have stuff in the future that visits obviously Kip and more of his repercussions. So I'm excited to read that 20 years later. But the problem with this book is just like too much. It actually detracts from those good arcs at the beginning. And that's the problem. And I still have really fond memories of this trilogy. I just, like you said, the third act is just a jumbled action movie mess. And they're just throwing characters left and right, bad guys, new bad guys, a guy that's leading the Monstellation.
Michael Bay directed this third book.
People running in slow motion. Shaky cams everywhere. It's unfortunate because the finale of the first book was very constrained, and I thought it was so cool. Like a ragtag pirate fleet randomly runs into Dalla's Star Destroyers, and the Falcon's just in the middle, and the Kip's and the Suncrusher in the middle as well, and they're just trying to get out of there. That was a cool finale, and it was not bombastic at all till that final moment. The whole book was reserved. This seems like the third act.
Bad stick.
So a lot of problems here. Trying to be too action packed is actually a story problem.
Yeah, no, you could have stopped this book like halfway through and gotten the complete Luke and Kip and Darkseid and story.
Well, let's do our final criticism here, Mike. I got one that involves this battle.
Oh, I'm done. The rest of the criticisms.
I've got this one. I thought this was the dumbest thing, even though maybe on paper, if you're pitching an action movie, it sounds cool. You write Sun Crusher versus Death Star boss battle. It's literally a boss fight between two space stations. One's miniature, one's giant, and they're fighting. They're shooting at each other. Like the Death Star is literally firing its what do they call it in Rogue One? The single ignition.
They call single reactor ignition.
It's since the prototype Death Star, it's actually shooting a single reactor. lasers at the Sun Crusher. The Sun Crusher's like dodging. It's like, what is happening here? And then guess what, Mike? They both get sucked down a black hole created by the.
I will say, I love the current canon backstory of the development of the Death Star much more than Legends. Starting with Poggle the Lesser and the Geonosians, and then Krennic overseeing the project, and Tarkin's involvement that we have in the current Galen story that ties into Rogue One with Galen Erso and Catalyst. I think that was the name of the book. That to me is so much more interesting than Tarkin hid all these people in a black hole cluster that built the Death Star, and she had no idea that it could be used for evil.
One of the main scientists. Yeah. So and they get sucked down a black hole, and Kip basically escape pods out. So it is a.
Oh no, we should talk about this escape pod because that's freaky. I was like shopping for groceries in Target while listening to the end of this book.
What?
And, Kip like breaks his arms and legs to fit inside
a child-sized box.
A airport like carry-on that fits in an overhead bin or something. To escape the black hole somehow, even though we know, because we've watched movies, if he had ridden with the Sun Crusher into the black hole, Han Solo could have found him behind a bookcase in the past.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. There it is. You got it out of me.
I hope you followed along.
You got it out of me. Of course I did. Of course I did. I love.
Well, I was talking to the listener. I knew you were with me.
I love me some Nolan.
Go watch Interstellar if you didn't understand that one.
Yeah, I mean it's a cool idea seeing the Death Star sucked down a black hole. I get that imagery wise, but it's just too, like I said, too bombastic. When you've already had all these crazy space battles and Imperial agents capturing Anakin, all this stuff, it doesn't need to end in a boss fight between two super weapons.
That is very true. I like that you like frame it as a boss fight.
And to me, it retracts from the Jedi Academy story, like you said, Mike, and it retracts from what should be kind of the climax is Luke's, even though it is a bit cheesy, like Luke's students, Voto Boss and Luke from the Spirit Realm defeating Exar Kun. Should have been that.
All of those criticisms aside, I am not a monster. I did like parts of this. Legends fanboys, don't come at me, because our next little bit is I Will Make It Canon. We're going to talk about parts of this that we really liked, that we'd like to see brought forward.
Oh, I love this segment. Canon. Let's go.
All right, so let's make some things canon. What's the first thing you would save from this story and bring forward into the new Disneyverse or whatever?
I essentially the entire events that happen at the Academy, I would save. I know that's very broad, but essentially from the moment Luke gets his 12 students to the end, even Kip falling to the dark side, I like. And even the Sith coma, it seems strange at first, but I like it too. I really like Luke's students with all their different strengths, all their different mutant powers, banding together to figure out how to save him and how to protect the temple. So that whole storyline I actually really like you said, Mike, it does seem a little weak that Exar Kun was defeated the way he was, but it's fine because it literally serves the story. And that is the end piece to that really good story. So I like all that. I mean, I even like the stuff early on, Mike, with Gantoris, like being influenced by Exar Kun over time. And people are like, hey, Gantoris he's wearing black mascara now.
That guy's weird. What's wrong with him?
All black now. And but I don't know. I like all that. And that's vague, but and we can get to I'm sure you might have some things you like from the Jedi Academy itself within it. But at the whole story as a whole about the Jedi Academy onward, I like. And it being on Yavin 4 is a nice touch.
So do you wish that the flashbacks we saw in episode 8 were of like this specific Jedi Academy, or do you like the broad generalizations that we were given?
I could go either way. I wanted more. Of course I want more of the Jedi Academy. I really want a lot more of the Jedi Academy, but if it doesn't like we've mentioned in the past, Mike, if it doesn't serve the story of, say, the next movie, if they were to show it, or if it didn't serve the story of The Last Jedi, it wasn't really necessary. But that doesn't mean I don't want it, right? I definitely want it. And those are actually some of my favorite scenes in the entire movie because it's, well, we've never had a flashback in Star Wars, and getting Luke in a interesting time. Basically getting Luke right before the sequel trilogies, right? Years before the sequel trilogies. That's interesting. But yeah, I would have liked, I mean, even if it was just on Yavin, I would have nerded out a little bit.
And they didn't say it wasn't on Yavin. I guess it's still a possibility. Yeah, no, I'm with you on most of that. The things that I liked the most, I actually really did like the toddler Jedi.
I'm shocked you liked that. I was
Luke influencing Jason and Jenna. So if we get a comic or a book later on where like 3-year-old Ben Solo uses the Force in a very powerful way to save his mom or dad or whatever, I'm totally on board with that. I think that's great. And like you said, I really liked the personalities or traits or character classes of the other Jedi Academy students. And that's something that we can totally see in canon after episode 9 comes out. Once the story is wrapped up, they go back and fill it in with books or comics about the other students that were at Luke's Jedi
I really
Academy.
enjoy that, yeah.
So if we end up with like a Karana T, Strain, Tion, Cam Solisari analogs, they just
Silgal,
the same names or different ones, I'm totally on board. Silgal,
a Mon Calamari
totally
healer Jedi. It just sounds cool on paper.
Even though we know that a lot of them die and some of them turn to the dark side, that's another interesting twist. I am totally on board.
Oh yeah,
finding out what happens to
You're talking
these
canonically.
students.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like if we brought those characters essentially,
the people that die and or
to
become Knights of Ren and or leave or whatever. Yeah, all the things that happen. That would actually be more on the line too, because you start liking these characters and bad things happen. Obviously, when Kylo Ren goes bad.
Yeah, and one thing I'm noticing about me as an adult revisiting these old Star Wars stories. You can accuse me of falling victim to Disney marketing or being a Star Wars shill, or I know you're not going to, but other listeners, whatever. I actually really like that the very first time that Luke loses a student to the dark side that happens to be related to him causes him to take such drastic action to end the Jedi or whatever, because I loved all of these legend stories as a kid. But we know that Luke loses several more to the dark side. That's a whole lot of failing as a teacher. And it served its purpose as a narrative device to sell books.
Yeah, over years.
You and I read as we were kids. Yeah, like I totally get it. But considering the overall story of Luke Skywalker, I really do love that new canon has his first big failure of losing someone to the dark side in such a dramatic way, having such a big impact on him and the galaxy at large. And the last thing I'll say is I want to make Admiral Dala canon, and in my head, she is canon. She was in Solo. That was the Gorgon that Lando, Han, and Kira encountered in the Kessel Run. So they haven't told me it's not. So my headcanon
that was
says
Dala.
That
She's like, "What are you doing in my house?" Yeah, Dala definitely. So yeah, toddler Jedi, 100%. Personalities and the characters of the students. Oh yeah, and I really did like the Kessel stuff in the first book a lot.
No, I did too, with like the
Indiana Jones stuff,
the world building and like the spice spiders and everything.
Han and Kip and Chewie working together to get out of there. It felt very Solo, the movie. So great.
Which is, if you haven't seen it, is a better movie than you've been told.
Yeah. You need to see it.
All right. We've talked a long time about the Jedi Academy trilogy and specifically Champions of the Force. I had a great time doing it, though. But we are about
We
done
are
with
done
that,
with
right,
that.
Jesse?
And, you know, Mike, moving on, we've got a new promotion for patrons of the Canon Cantina with Audible. Audible is offering you guys that listen to the show a free download with a free 30-day trial just to give you the opportunity to check out their service. So this week, once again, like we've been doing, we are recommending another Star Wars audiobook, and this time we're recommending The Courtship of Princess Leia. So if you guys remember us doing that on the show some time ago, that is the book that takes place on Dathomir. It's a standalone book, and it's by Dave Wolverton. It's a story that a lot of people have waited for, and it's also something that we've already covered, but it seemed appropriate, Mike, because it's in the timeline right when these books were written, these Jedi Academy books.
Right, and as you mentioned earlier, Courtship of Princess Leia came out
Right.
in the same year as these three Jedi Academy books. So, like 1994, we haven't done our full research yet because we just discovered this thing right before we started recording. I want to see all the Star Wars things that came out in 1994 because it looks like it was a great year for Star Wars.
And even though, like, you know, there's parts of these books we didn't like, and The Courtship of Princess Leia is not great at times. I mean, it was a really enjoyable listen on the audiobook. I actually listened to the audiobook this time as well, if you remember, Mike. So once again, to claim this offer from us, you just go to audibletrial.com/thecanoncantina. So once again, that's audibletrial.com/thecanoncantina for your free audiobook or free Star Wars audiobook.
All right, and that wraps up all of our stuff that has to do with Legends and all these old books. Let's jump forward into some news from the HoloNet.
This just in to HoloNet News.
All right, Mike, starting off the news, coming out swinging. We didn't mention this last week, even though it was news at the time because we had to get through Dark Apprentice, but Christmas Day, I got a gift delivered to me in my Instagram feed from StarWars.com. It was, man, what a gift opening my Instagram and seeing it. There was a picture from Jon Favreau, the lead creator and producer and director of the the man of the Mandalorian series that's coming out next year, the live action show we've talked about a lot now on the show. And all he tweeted was a physical, I'm assuming animatronic live action IG-88 in front of a green screen. Holy crap.
Jesse texted me "holy crap" about 50 times as soon as that hit.
I don't know if
internet.
we've talked a lot on the show about my extreme love for this robot.
Yeah, he's a giant IG-88
Right.
fanboy, and I like IG-88 as well. I don't know that we reacted in the same way to this news,
It's just,
though.
it's refreshing. Like, I don't know, Mike. We've talked about this a lot on the show where it's like, what is too far as a reference? Like, what is too winky and what is just enough? Things like in Solo where they said, didn't you work with Bosk? That is just enough. I really like that.
I agree with you. That was great. Why couldn't we get Bosk instead
Right.
of these guys? That was a great reference. Although, on the other side, in the same movie, Lando saying, I hate
Right.
mining colonies is too far onto the other side. So I am excited for the potential of IG-88 being in The Mandalorian. However, I told Jesse I was very nervous about this and potentially even like worried because at this point, I am wary every time they announce that a character we know is going to appear in Star Wars in any way. Just because sometimes, at some point it's going to go wrong and it's going to, I'm doing air quotes here in our visual medium of podcasting, ruin IG-88 that we had a good, image of through like Shadows of the Empire. And
That's
stuff.
true, but at the same time, like I think sometimes we look through the lens of our extreme fanaticism fandom, and we don't look through the general public like a Tarkin or a Vader or something. That's something we know and the general public knows. I don't think that many people know IG-8, like except super Star Wars nerds. So the cool part about this is like I don't think IG-8 could ever be in a Star Wars movie again. Maybe he could, maybe in like a solo type movie, but a live action show that only mainly diehard fans are going to watch. I know general audience is going to watch it, but like to them, it's just an assassin robot, right? It's not like, oh, that's Darth Vader doing a Darth Vader thing that's now canonical in a show, right? So that's kind of the line to me is like, how big is the character? Boss name being dropped, that's fine, right? Hondo showing up or something, like, what is that?
My friends.
Yeah, I don't know. I really want that.
My Hondo started out as the Count from Sesame Street. I think what we just revealed is that Jesse has friends who don't know who IG-88 is, which might show a difference in who we hang out with.
I'm not sure that's actually true, but well, yeah, I do. I mean, I have friends that are not crazy Star Wars fanatics, and I have friends that are. So that's
How
a good scale,
dare
Mike,
you.
to be like, who is this? And they're like, a battle droid from the prequels.
How good of friends
Like
are
you
we?
show a picture and they're like, all right, how close of friends are we in this? They're like, if they answer a robot, a battle droid from the prequels. I mean, like there's a sliding scale, right? Of like,
Okay, I'm glad that your scale starts with it's a robot and not it's a battle droid from the prequels, because you're excluding a lot of people.
I'm
if
saying
you
I
just
think
put it
a battle droid in
at
the prequels would be
prequels.
somebody that's like, you know, like we've talked about a lot. I think cool Star Wars fans, people that just really love the movies and that's it, right? That might be somebody, or oh, that one robot from Empire in that one scene, right? But other than that, you need to know who IG-8 is. And this also gives me the biggest hope of all, Mike, that Bosk or Zuckuss or Forlom could be in this movie. I don't need Dengar because Dengar is in everything these days. So
Shut
he's
up,
in
Dengar.
books, he's in canonical things, he's in parodies like Robot Chicken, he's in Clone Wars. There's all sorts of things. But if you give me some IG-8 or Zuckuss, one of these lesser seen bounty hunters, oh yeah, I'm in.
Well, since you brought it up, I'm going to go ahead and interject it here. You're listening to this episode a few days after my co-host's birthday. We put out a nice tweet that he is the Zuckuss to my Forlom. He is the maybe neutral good, lawful
That's
good,
right.
whatever, to my chaotic evil, maybe
That's
that
true.
Forlom is.
I didn't think about it in that way. That's good. Yeah. Slightly force sensitive.
But
Zuckuss,
I think
slightly force.
we make a nice pairing. So thank you to everybody who wished Jesse a happy
Yes.
birthday the other day. And then this jerk I do a podcast with had to go and one up me. I was riding high on like 6 months ago. Ryan Johnson liked
right.
the tweet from me. Ooh, I'm special. And then this turd on the other
In
side
the
of my
wind.
Skype screen had to go and ruin that. Don't
I'm going to
throw
say that
venom
every time
into
you
that when
say
I'm trying
turd.
to
I'm gonna
build
always
you
gonna
up.
say
Come
in the
on.
wind. Yeah, Mike, I'm still kind of in shock from this. Mark Hamill liked my tweet. I don't know what I did to deserve this.
Well, it's funny because he liked the tweet from the Canon Cantina. He still has no idea
That's
who
true.
you are, but he has seen the words the Canon
A Luke
Cantina
Skywalker
together
podcast.
before.
Yeah, the man himself.
Even if he accidentally hit the like button with his thumb as he was scrolling through on his phone.
Yeah, and the best part of this, Mike, was this was not a tweet I actually wrote for Mark. That was the shocking part. I know you're the Ryan tweet. We tweeted
That's
Ryan
true.
a lot, and we tweeted, and he liked our tweet about the Last Jedi. But this one was just me tweeting another podcast about my memories of Stan Lee, because I had some good memories seeing Stan Lee at a Comic-Con I went to in Dallas, and he was just truly inspiring and just an incredible, sweet guy. And I just tweeted about that, and Mark's like. So there you go.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it when I saw that, and I loved your reaction when I told you that it happened.
That was very exciting.
So another piece of news dropped during a family tradition of mine. Maybe not every year, but usually at Christmas time, my family watches the Disney Christmas parade that's on
right.
TV together. And during that special this year, they dropped some news about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, the what people are going to call Star Wars Land, that's opening next summer, I believe, in Disneyland, and next fall in Disney World in Florida. And we got some new information about about two of the rides. One of them called Millennium Falcon: Smuggler's Run, and the other one called Star Wars: Rise of the Resistance. So we're naming these rides horribly, but they look great based on the 2 minutes we saw.
Groundbreaking technology.
If you hadn't heard, the Millennium Falcon ride sounds awesome. There are 6 people in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. Pilot, co-pilot, 2 gunners. I'm not sure what the designations for the other 2 people are, but you are essentially seeing the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon around you, and things are happening in real time based on whatever you do to the controls of the Millennium Falcon. It's essentially a giant 6-person
simulator
video game.
sort of thing.
Simulator kind of thing. So if you picture how groundbreaking Star Tours was in 1986, how everybody was like, yeah, this is great. This is military technology putting me into Star Wars. We're doing the same thing in 2019.
Love it.
Each of these 6-person simulators, where everybody has a different role, has 8 supercomputers processing in real time whatever inputs you're doing to the show and whatever. So basically, you're living a Star Wars video game in real time with 5 other people, and each of these 6-person cockpits, which they have to have at least 10 of in the show. In the ride building to get enough people through it. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of supercomputers. That's a lot of power backing these things up. I can't wait to go on this thing. You're driving the Millennium Falcon, and it's responding in real time to whatever happens on your experience there. And supposedly, your experience, whatever you did on the Millennium Falcon, is going to be tied to your ticket. So whether that's a wristband or whatever that you're wearing, other people that you encounter in Galaxy's Edge, which happens at Black Spire Outpost on the planet Batuu, you might encounter cast members who are like, hey, I saw you crash the Falcon earlier today. They might talk trash at you. Yeah. Galaxy's Edge sounds horrifyingly intimidating and incredibly immersive at the same time. And we got a little bit of information about Rise of the Resistance, the other ride, which I don't know as much about, but it's essentially you are taken through the story somewhat of becoming a part of the Resistance. I don't know if it was described as solely like a dark ride, which in theme park terms is like those rides you ride through in the dark where there's some robots talking at you, plus there's maybe some screens or whatever showing you something. But basically you escape from a First Order prison and become part of the Resistance. You're going to encounter Kylo Ren. I hope there's a great Kylo Ren animatronic. That lightsaber, if they do it well as a practical effect, could be great. I imagine it's going to be that Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in both theme parks is going to be full until about 2025. So maybe then we'll be able to go.
It's all very exciting. And I read something about the Rise of the Resistance, Mike, where they said it's going to be a off the rails, on rails ride. And I don't know what that means, but that sounds cool.
I do know a little bit more about that. So there are some other Disney rides. I think that the Winnie the Pooh ride in Tokyo Disney Sea is an example of one. But basically, we have grown up with this idea of rides that have to follow rail systems. They are built onto a specific track. These new rides are controlled by Wi-Fi on an open area that just go where the Wi-Fi tells them to. So it's not necessarily tied to a specific
it's randomized
track. So the experience can be different each time you ride it. And there can be variations in the ride each time. So instead of being tied to a specific like roller coaster track or rail, just your car is being driven via Wi-Fi control wherever.
Yeah, I also heard in this ride that and I think some of this is just hearsay and speculation, but I also heard that part of this ride too is kind of like the potentially like the Men in Black ride at Universal, where you like actually have blasters and you get to fight troopers.
If it is, I hope so. I hope that is true, because I have not had a chance to do it yet. But there's a virtual reality simulator like game. I don't know what else to call it. Called it's not Rise of the Resistance, because that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
Secrets of the Empire is put on by like ILM X Labs.
It looks awesome.
It's also produced by a company called The Void that's based here in Salt Lake City. They don't have a simulator open here yet, because I would have told everybody about that yet. But the headquarters of the company is here. It's basically a VR simulation where you assume the role of a rebel going undercover as a stormtrooper with K2SO, like a virtual reality video game. And if they incorporate that technology into Rise of the Resistance, where you end up like attacking the Resistance or attacking attacking the First Order as part of the Resistance,
on top of the practical effects, on top of that too. Yeah.
Like there is so much potential here.
It's exciting.
I know that I want to go as soon as possible. I don't know that I'll be able to go before like 2021, honestly, to see any of this stuff. And honestly, I think that part of the reason that Star Wars Celebration in 2019 is in Chicago,
get people away
instead of Orlando or Anaheim, is that these would not be ready in time for Star Wars Celebration, because Celebration is happening in April, and they've said that Galaxy's Edge will open in summer in Disneyland in California and fall in Disney
timeline
World in
adds
Florida.
up. Very exciting. I cannot wait. You can find me at the bar trying some Star Wars cocktails.
Oh, all of the cast members are supposed to be like interactive and like
Immersive.
Costumed and everything. I might move to California and never leave.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Oh, and Mike, if anyone's been living under a rock, they've built a full scale replica of the Falcon. So that would be enough.
And the replica of the Falcon is supposedly like where you're getting in line for the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run ride. So potentially inside the Falcon, there's all these different like rooms where you and 5 other people complete the mission or whatever.
And we had to talk about completing that mission, like the different roles, Mike. Like every time you ride the ride, you're like, okay, I'm going to be a gunner this time. It's going to be a different experience every time.
Gunner, pilot, co-pilot, whatever the other people are. Yeah. I like the selfish me is like, I want to go as soon as possible. The reasonable practical me is like, well, maybe when the youngling is old enough, we can make this vacation happen. Whatever happens, I will definitely let you, the listener, know. And as soon as I go on any of these rides,
we will talk
about it
extensively, I'm sure. So.
Because, as we mentioned in our first episode, for those of you that have joined us later, I first became introduced to Star Wars because of the Star Tours ride at Disney World. So my love of Star Wars is deeply intertwined with my love of Disney World, Disneyland, and things
depending
like that.
on how big the show is, then guys, if we continue to grow, we will do something fun, like cover the park in whatever way we can, you know.
It has been confirmed, Jesse. I don't know if I've told you this, that RX-24, Captain Rex, voiced by Paul Rubens, the original pilot of the Starspeeder 2000, is returning as DJ Rex in the new Star Wars land, and supposedly voiced by Paul Rubens again. So I am so excited to see Captain Rex
again. Original Captain Rex.
The original, real Captain Rex. Eat it, Clone Wars.
And Mike, our last bit of news is news I'm very excited about. I've actually been saving myself for this to let them build up a little bit. But if you guys remember, we talked about those standalone comics that were coming out by Marvel that were the single issue comics that in one story on one character. And they were going to start with the Age of Republic, then go to the Age of the Rebellion Empire, and then go to the Age of the Resistance. And they have fully rolled out these, and they are kind of deep into the Age of the Republic now, Mike. So what's come out in this order was Qui-Gon issue, Darth Maul issue, and Obi-Wan issue. And by the time you guys are listening to this, And in a few days, the Django issue comes out. So they're essentially going good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. And guess who's last, Mike? Of course, I have to wait till the end. It's a bad guy. Grievous is last. They're saving Grievous for absolutely last before they move on to the Empire versus Rebellion series. But what's really exciting about these, Mike, is apparently these are all incredible, and they actually all have some really strong character building moments that teach us more about these characters. And basically, I just wanted to touch on without ruining it. Qui-Gon's arc specifically.
Yeah, you better not ruin it, because I recently started a new job and have not had a chance to read these yet. So spoiler free, son, because I do intend to read these.
Spoiler free. Qui-Gon's arc involves him just going on a mission out of the blue that he's been led to go on just by the living force. It's kind of, he just
did someone kidnap his daughter and he has a special set of skills to rescue her?
Not that I know of. I've only seen the beginning of this.
Okay, that's not a denial. It's a not yet.
Essentially, he's led by the living force he's compelled to go on this this spiritual trek, and we get just a purely introspective Qui-Gon story, and he essentially has a vision of the events, parts of things that are going to happen in his past his lifetime. So I'm very excited to see all that. Also, on top of this, Mike, I'm just going to throw this information in here. The Vader comic finished. So the Marvel Vader comic we've mentioned in passing a lot.
The second run has ended?
Well,
because I know they
Vader
did
itself is ended.
A Vader comic that covered like between A New Hope and Empire, and they started a second run that was about Vader hunting Jedi between 3 and 4. Has that one ended also?
Now I'm confused. I think the original one ended, but maybe it is the second one.
I didn't mean to throw you under.
That's a great question, because you're right. They did kind of bring that new one out of the blue. I think it's just the regular Vader. Something I want to look into. Like you said, Mike, we've got a lot of comic catching up to do. But I love all the Vader stuff. You guys know we gushed about Vader Down. It was so fun. But that's interesting as well.
Yeah. So everything I've heard about this second Vader run, which was him hunting Jedi and stuff leading up to Rogue One or Episode 4, was great. I didn't know it was ending, but I'm assuming you're right because you put it in the show here. I can't wait for the hardcover collected edition of all of
the
this
omnibus
stuff, because I had intentionally held off on reading.
I'm at a weird point, Mike, where I have a lot of the Vader comics in graphic novel form, but I also am very tempted by the omnibus. So I don't know, but to round out Age of the Republic. So the time you guys are listening to this, Django is coming out. Just following Django, to round out the rest of the Age of the Republic, we have Anakin, Padme, Count Dooku, and General Grievous. What a way to end. So we're going to get all these character arcs about characters, the main characters of the prequels. And
I am most looking forward to that Padme book.
The Padme book coming out, Queen's Shadow.
No, not the Padme novel, the Padme comic book. You know what I meant when you said that.
I'm most looking forward to, I think, Qui-Gon and Grievous, and then Padme is great too. And Obi-Wan's, I didn't mention, I think Obi-Wan's, Mike, focuses on the episode 2 Obi-Wan. So to put you in the headspace of where that one's at. So all good stuff. I'm thrilled.
I want to move on and do something better with my life, or whatever he tells that guy.
We will follow up in the future with these comics.
That's great. So there's a preview of comics we haven't read. Hopefully someday we read them and get back to you with some actual thoughts.
Hopefully we have time to read other things when we're not reading things constantly for the show.
We've already told them we listen to them. We don't read them. Don't give our secret away.
That's funny.
All right. So that will do it for our supersized episode here, wrapping up the Jedi Academy trilogy. We have a couple things to do before we leave. Like we typically do, we're going to read some reviews today.
That's right, Mike. So thank you at home for writing us reviews on Apple Podcasts. It's continuing to help the show grow, and we're getting more reviews still, Mike. So this is very, very nice. We've got a review right off the bat from a great name, Play-Doh Eater. The title is Good So Far. This is a quick review, Mike. This podcast is my style. I love it.
You know, I do too. I like that we got somebody with a random episode. Like, you know what? This is good so far. We may have lost them since they first wrote this review, but I hope they've enjoyed everything.
Well, I think we've only improved since the beginning, so I hope they've stayed. But Mike, I saved this next review for you because just the title, just the name of the person alone is great. And then the title, and yeah. I know you like to read the funny ones. And guess what, Mike? This is funny, and it's 5 stars. It's not 1 star.
Have we gotten a 1 star yet? I've been begging for those. God,
Stop.
No, we still only have 5 stars. I'm telling you, like the person that writes us a really, 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 really funny 1-star review, there will be something special I will do for you. I don't know what that is yet, but I will figure it out when it happens. Anyway, this 5-star review is from 30% off the retail price. I love Star Trek. That's a great name. Nourishing intergalactic meals for my mind belly, and my grandma likes it too. Oh, that might be the first endorsement we have from our grandma.
I love it. So thank you 30% off the retail price. And I do appreciate the I love Star Trek. Mike and I are Star Wars fanatics, but we like Star Trek as well. And you know, it's just funny. I know that's a tired joke, like telling Star Trek people Star Wars and telling Star Wars people Star Trek, like, you know, getting confused or whatever, but it still works. It's a good dad joke.
Yeah, whether I'm right or not, I'm picturing your grandma as the role that B. Arthur played in the Star Wars Holiday Special. So if I'm wrong, give us a funny 1-star review.
My mind belly is a great way to describe what we are attempting here, Mike. So that's
we need to make that our subtitle on the show or whatever.
Make a shirt off of this.
So that will do it for the actual content we have here at the Canon Cantina today. Do us a favor, go to thecanoncantina.com, our new website, for links to all of our social media stuff. And you can actually listen to the show there as well. The show, The Canon Cantina, is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, Podcast Addict, YouTube, and on Spotify. And Jesse has recently started streaming stuff on Twitch as well.
You guys that have been joining me on Twitch, thank you so much. It's first of all encouraging, second of all fun to talk to you in the chat, and just fun for you to watch playing Battlefront. I'm actually playing a lot as we speak, Mike. These weekends, there's a lot of events going on in Battlefront, so I'll be playing almost every...
As we speak, you mean you've been playing Battlefront this whole time we've been recording?
Beating up Jigglypuff last week. And I've just been racking up that sweet XP. There's a lot of events going up leading to Count Dooku's release. It's very exciting.
That's right. So help spread the word of our show. Subscribe, rate, review. If you think we can do something better, leave us a funny 1-star review or send us an email to canoncantina@gmail.com. Join us next week as we jump back into the current canon. Yeah, we spent 3 weeks in a row, or 4 of the last 5, if you don't count our episode with the guys from The War Starts at Midnight. We've been in Legends for a long time now. We're going to go back into current Disney canon with 2 stories in 1 episode. We're going to talk about Marvel Comics, The Screaming Citadel, and we're going to look at the first chapter of the anthology book, The Legends of Luke Skywalker, which neither of us have read before. We hope you join us next week as we cover those 2 stories. Hope you had a great time here at the Canon Cantina, everybody. Cheers.
May the Force be with you.
Boring conversation anyway.